I want to welcome to the show today, Kenita Tang. Kenita, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Did I pronounce your name properly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. Most people mess up.
Yeah. Brittany Howard, a mutual friend of ours introduced you to me. So I appreciate that, Brittany. Um, I've heard so much about your story. We did a little pre-interview the other day. I think what it boils down to is you've been able, it's been a real roller coaster, your career, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I don't think, like some of my other guests, you've never been, or correct me if I'm wrong, like really, really poor and broke, but you've been successful, had some very tough financial times, right? And today you're doing very well. I mean, how would you sort of explain it?
Well, actually, surprisingly, I have been really, really poor. And later on in life, I've done a little bit better. But, even growing up, was doing really well. We're in a pretty affluent area. And then my parents got divorced. It changed our life kind of overnight. When we moved, it was a couple of days after we moved, I saw someone get shot. So it was quite um, a an awakening experience almost. And it was just such a different lifestyle than I was used to, but it's what probably fuels me so much today. You go from being able to pick out anything you want at the grocery store to putting stuff back and standing. I mean, I remember times when we were in the line and we were that family, that had to put stuff back, where I still remember that a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi was, if it was 99 cents, my mom would purchase it. If it was $1.19, she wouldn't, and she would wait for those sales. So it's like, again, that was like a luxury to us, so just having such a lifestyle change, you know, and again, living life so differently after the move and going from having to kind of not having and really having to struggle, pushed me to be successful and to also get to the point where I felt I could take care of my mother and to help her.
So let's just tell everyone, which part of the country are you in?
I'm in Maryland.
You're in Maryland. Cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool. And I want to focus, before we go through some of the tougher times, that you've really had to sort of pull yourselves up from the bootstraps. I want to talk a little bit about where you are today with your business, because I know you're your coach, you've got an online course, you've got a team, you've got a television show that you're on. There's so many things that you're doing. It's insane. So, but you've obviously built up to that. But tell me a little bit about your team today. I know you're with EXP, you're selling homes, you're mainly in the Maryland area. How many homes do you expect to sell this year, and how big is your team?
So this year we expect to hit between 90 and 100 homes this year. Last year, I do have a team. I have many admins. So I have a listing manager, transaction coordinator, VA, multiple buyers agents, an ISA. So that's my team now. As of last year, I was a single agent, and it was my 5th year of real estate. I closed over 15 million in real estate and 50 properties.
And what would you say your GCI was on that? Do you know roughly?
The year before, it's funny that I knew it was like 515,000. Last year was like 492, I think 731. I'm a numbers person, sorry.
Yeah, that's amazing. 400K GCI, that's awesome. And what would you say sort of net after, are you putting a lot out in expenses? Do you have a lot of overhead, or is it pretty?
Yeah, so I mean, I do have overhead. I do believe that you should invest in yourself. So much of my money has gone back into the business. Not necessarily at the beginning in advertisement, because I was doing a lot of cold calling, lead generating, marketing to my sphere. And then after that, and staff as well, to make sure that my clients have an amazing experience, but also in coaching and mentoring. So also making sure, I didn't know how to use social media. I had not been on Facebook or Instagram. So that was rather new to me. So just teaching myself all of that, and paying is the fastest way to get there. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, so yeah, let's backtrack a little bit. Let's go back to you mentioned growing up, your parents got divorced. So it's after the divorce, you moved into a different area, and basically your lifestyle sort of took a turn for the worse, or it was obviously a lot harder on you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really was a lot harder on my mother and myself. Just her being a single mom and having to work long hours. Just literally, you grow up in the house while she's not there. There is no playing outside by yourself. And so it was, like I said, it was quite different. And so also struggling to make ends meet. I started my first job, I think I was either 11 or 12 at a snowball stand. And that's when I learned the power of sales.
What's a snowball stand? I'm from California. I've never heard of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's hot there all the time, right? So here we have all these snowball stands. So it's like a little box that's like hot as Hades during the summer. And typically they'll put like a young college student or high school kid in there to sell snowballs. And I remember like it was like 25 cents to put marshmallow on. And I wasn't getting like commission, but I wanted to do a good job. So I was so excited at the end of the night because I had to write down like how many upsells I had. So I would get so excited, like, selling these upsells of like marshmallow, et cetera. But I did well there and helped my little friends to work there and like manage them. So it was great because I could help give and take care of my family in a way, by helping my mom out. So yeah, it was quite a, rude awakening kind of to move. But I think like it kind of also made me who I am, that struggle that I had to go through and also saw my mother go through as well.
So it sounds like sales is in your DNA.
Yep.
Right? So what about college and stuff? And then, talk me through how you I know you had you're very successful in sales before real estate. Talk me through a little bit that stage and how that sort of laid the foundation for your real estate career.
So yes, I'm so happy you asked that. Even living where we were, my mom really didn't have a lot of money, so she took me to many private schools. And it was so funny because she knew we couldn't pay, but she would walk in there with this confidence. And so I got into all of them, but we didn't have any money to pay. So we finally got a scholarship. I went to a very wonderful private school out here and was set to go to college, was looking at an Ivy League, and changed my mind and decided to go to Bible college and started ministering.
Wow.
So, and then in the middle of that, I started working at it used to be Head Company, and I was selling, and I saw people over in the men's suit department. They were on commission. So I started asking questions about like that and makeup and everything, and then ended up going to Radio Shack. And kind of cell phones had been out, but it was like a big change with the technology that they had, the CDMA. I don't even remember all the details now, but the technology had changed. The cell phones became a lot more affordable. And I remember standing up at the counter and asking someone, do you want a I think they were buying batteries. And I said, would you like a free cell phone with that? And then they stopped and listened to what I had to say and ended up taking this penny cell phone. But we got commission on $300. So after that, I started asking every single person that came up, would you like a free cell phone with that? No matter what they were buying. I didn't know anything about electronics because, again, growing up rather poor, I didn't know how to set up a video game. We didn't have one television in the house. So I got all these Tandy models manuals together and studied all the stuff that nobody else reads. I read it. So I knew how to hook up your Atari. I knew everything about an RF cable, coaxial cables, polarity, you name it, radar detectors, what worked, what didn't. So within, I would say about 3 months, I made more money than my mother had made probably in a full year.
Oh my gosh.
I was just turning 18 years old. So I was part of their club or whatever was top 10 in the DMV area. And then I would sell some of the computers and stuff, but the cell phones, and then we got spiffs on them. So literally I would just stand at the front door while everybody else was talking in the back and literally hit every single client that came through the front door. So sales kind of jumped in, and then I in my blood, so to speak, and then went to work for Bank of America, same thing. Was selling there. We used to have something called 444. I did well. And then my manager, she's a super awesome lady. Her branch had never made this 444. So I made my goals, the next salesperson, and half of hers. And so the whole branch was covered and she made her, her goals. So But every time I went to a new place, I realized that there was a glass ceiling because I ended up not going to college. I got married at 19, ended up not going to college, and then it ended up selling all of the stuff. So I was doing great as far as commission and sales, and finally thought, okay, when I had children, I wanted to stay home with my kids. And I thought in this area, that's almost impossible on one income. And because of how I grew up, I was deathly terrified of being poor again. And so still, we really hadn't hit it big, myself and my husband. So I went into my insurance agency owner's office, and he looked like he was happy. So I asked him how he did it. He said, he bought the franchise. Next thing you know, I was signed up to start and work, with Allstate and start a franchise. And about 3/4 of the way through the process, we moved, and I found out that the agency owner near our house was selling. And the people that had tried to buy it fell through. But here I am, like 20 years old, I haven't been to college, I don't have any money. So I'm like, how am I going to buy this book of business for this much money? I mean, we have nothing, literally. So I was still working at the bank. I decided to try to sell the house we had on my own. And I would go home at lunch. I mean, I probably could have been like murdered or something. I would go home at lunch and show the house to people who called. And I had my now ex-husband, but I had him make this sign that looked like all professional. And we finally found someone, because I knew that I needed every dollar to try to buy this Allstate franchise, or at least to put the down payment and scrape together that. So we ended up selling the house, this lovely couple who had a real estate agent, thank God. So like we still saved money, but she helped probably save my butt with legal paperwork. And I was able, with the help of the SBA and scraping together every penny possible, to purchase this business. I didn't know what I was doing. I had never sold insurance a day in my life. And somehow I convinced every single person I had to run into that I could do it. And literally, I would call my manager. She still remembers. We're still friends. She's like, I would be bathing my child, and you would call, like, cry, like, help. I need to put these, policies through and everything. And so when I took over, it was a small book. It was like 1,400 clients. And when I ended up selling it, I had 8,000 clients. Wow. So I grew it. I'd taken like high school Spanish. So there were maybe like 50 clients that spoke Spanish. So at night I would go practice because the front desk receptionist left. And I kept working with myself till I stopped sweating and actually started speaking fluent Spanish. And when we sold the business, probably half of our clientele was Spanish speaking. All of my staff was. And that's how we grew our business. Between that and the immigrant community in Beltsville, I kind of ingratiated myself with that community, and they were wonderful with referrals and everything else. And many are my friends today. So I remember, probably 20 banks told me no. And the only reason I had credit, this is the craziest thing, the only reason I had some credit was because when I worked for Heck Company or Macy's, they give you like $100 credit card so you can get the discount. So thank God I had established like credit early. Even if you're not 18, they still give you this credit card. So anyway, it has helped me to establish some credit, and I was able to purchase this agency. And so we were at our height, top 2% in the country. When I took over, they were probably doing about 10 to 12 policies a month. Within like 3 months, I was doing over 110, 120 myself. Wow. So I was busting it. So it was great, so that's and then I got divorced and pretty much lost everything. I had to sell the insurance agency, sold my tag and title business. By then I had started a tag and title business because there was nobody that translated at the MBA. There was like one person. So I started a business and then, took care of all their paperwork, and I opened up a area franchise for Mailbox, etc. It was Mailbox It, which is like another company, not Mailbox, etc. So I did that. And so I had those 3 businesses. And so we went from doing extremely well. I had 3 small children, a set of twins, and a baby. So when I went through my divorce, my youngest child was 4 months. So I had 3 in diapers, and started over with basically nothing. So that's kind of my trajectory. and you will take out of me the rest of the story.
So you took over, the kids went with you, yeah?
Yeah, for the most part.
Perfect, perfect. And did you own a house at the time, or were you renting, or?
Yes, no, we owned a house. It was a $1.4 million home.
Oh,
Plus I had 2 vacation homes that were paid off. So it was, yeah, we had like a Porsche, I had multiple assistants. Like it was crazy. I had people that were running the 2 companies and then another office manager and employees, personal assistant, help, everything. So you want to talk about like rags to riches, like overnight, literally within like 3 months, everything was gone. It was like a lot of business stuff obliterated. I was on bed rest and a lot of stuff just.
if you had some vacation homes paid off, surely there was some equity there, and did the business you weren't able to sell and get money from that? I mean, how did it all disappear?
The crash of the whole thing was that we had purchased our home and put a very large amount of cash down, and then the market tanked.
So this is around 2008?
Yep. And
Okay.
so we bought it at the height of the market. The market crashed like maybe 2 months after that. And so now, with the market crashing, a lot of our business came from mortgage people. So my clients were suck and win. All of my contractor clients were going through. It was a lot of my friends went out of business completely. We were able to stay in business, but then you look at this $1.4 million house that's worth $700,000, like overnight. And it's funny because, like I always say, feel that I'm empathetic, especially ministering but when you go through it and you suddenly find yourself like almost starving to death, like if 3 small children, I used to say, well, why don't you just pay your mortgage? You're going through a short sale. You go through a short sale yourself, you lose basically everything. And you made what you think are pretty wise financial decisions. There's no way that your credit score goes from an 8 something, you can walk in anywhere and get anything, to literally you couldn't beg people for help.
Yeah.
So that's what happened when you have to short sale and you have all this other stuff going on with like I said, with the business. It was, when I went out on bed rest, it was just a mess, the whole thing. And so yeah, we ended up with like almost nothing.
So, okay. So you're in bed rest, obviously incredibly difficult time mentally, financially. You got the kids running around in diapers. You're just like, ah! What did you do to pull yourself out of that?
Well, have like 5 prayer partners, because literally I'm like, if I get off this phone, I'm gonna like cry nonstop. So yeah, it was one of the toughest times I think in my life. You're going through a financial situation. My business was my baby. I now had babies. We waited for quite a while to have kids, so now I have these children. I didn't have an easy time carrying them to term. Found out I had a blood clotting disorder, which I have not shared before this. So, but I found out I had a blood clotting disorder. So I went through many miscarriages trying to have my kids. So now I have my children and I have my business, and so it was such a big part of my life as well. And literally within a short time, you end up losing everything, the house, the businesses, all of that. So it was, I think I'm pretty tough, or feel that I am, but that one, and then of course you're going through a divorce with someone that you've been married to since you were almost a child, like very, very young. So just having your life partner and all of that, who you normally share things with, is also part of the issues. So I think for me, like pulling on my faith in God was like beyond. And then even after that, you're like, okay, I've gone to the end and there's like nothing left, like I feel like, how am I going to make this? Because if it was just for me, and I felt like, I mean, not to cry, but like, I felt like it was, this was almost exact repeat of what my mother had went through, so on top of all of this, you go from having this lifestyle that you've accompanied, that you become used to. And I mean, our house was so big, we had 7 bathrooms, and I left there and moved back in with my dad into the house that I had grown up in. It was like 800 square feet and had some like air quality issues. So, my children, they had asthma. We got pneumonia 3 times. And I remember like that was the turning point. We were in St. Agnes and I was watching the fireworks at New Year's and like literally crying because we had been RSV. My child had RSV. We were at the Kaiser and his blood oxygen level was plummeting. And like they were so busy, they were kind of ignoring me. And then I was like, I ran out screaming, like, I'm going to use my car as an ambulance, you know, like you better call 911 or something. So they finally called 911, rushed us to the hospital. And it was just crazy because I was there with my other children. And, you know, like I was there by myself when we finally ended up in St. Agnes because, you know, the kid's dad had taken the other two, or one, I think my mom had the other one. But it was just like, I was sitting there and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And you think, can I ever buy a house again? Can I ever establish myself? Because mind you, after all this happened, I had worked for myself for so many years. I did not even know how to write a good resume because I was never great at that stuff. Anyway, my ex-husband normally would help me out on that. And he was working with me at one point. So a lot of the, you know, tech stuff after like, I think it was like maybe 6 or 7 years in, he came to work with me. So it's like some of the tech stuff he handled. So here I am, you know, I've only worked for myself. I'm used to a totally different type of money. I have 3 small children. I kind of had nowhere to turn. I don't know what to do. And the person that I asked like for help with decisions is, you know, like we're estranged, obviously. So it was really hard, you know, for me at that time. And so I finally was like, you know, okay, I got to get it together mentally. And then on top of that, my youngest was breastfeeding and my twins were running around. And then, you know, you don't have any money to hire anybody to help you, you know, kind of manage things so you can take a little time to figure out what to do. And I did all of this so I could be a stay-at-home mom. And here I am like contemplating my whole entire life plan, like disintegrating in front of me. So after that, I mean, I did a lot of things. I remember I ran into a mom and I finally started to get myself together a little bit. Like I decided that I wanted to finally get hobbies. I was like, I never had hobbies before. Let me try to, you know, just turn inward and do some stuff I've always wanted to do. And I joined a ballroom competition. And it was funny because my daughter wouldn't let me put her down if I was in the room. So I would be dancing with her on my hip. And I ended up winning. I couldn't believe it. I ended up winning all 7 categories. And I was probably 50 pounds heavier than the heaviest contestant because I just had kids. And you know, it's a very professional ballroom. And I got out there. Everybody was so supportive. And so just bit by bit, I started like piecing my life back together. I tried to open a daycare. With the little bit that I had left, I'm like, okay, I'll do something around the kids so that I'll still be able to spend time with them. And tried so many times to break into that market for years. I did promotional modeling. And I mean, like you know, there's people that stand in Costco. I did that too. And I remember one day I was so tired because I had like all these little jobs. My brother had to drive me because I was scared to drive to Delaware. I thought I was going to fall asleep at the wheel. Because I had been up with the kids. So literally I got in the back seat and went to sleep. And he drove me up there. And I was like, instead of the Victoria's Secret angels, I was like the Axe angel. Like with body spray at Walmart. And I remember this mom that I had met in the store was telling me about, you know, these little companies that will pay you hourly to do promotional modeling. So I did a little bit of everything that I possibly could to make sure that, you know, money was coming in to see what stuck. And then finally, I got a job. I realized I'm like, look, you know, I know I'm not going to be able to stay home with my kids and figure out something I can leverage as a business. So let me just get back into sales. And that's when I went to look at car dealerships because I'm like, look, I know that I know I can sell stuff. And I know that if I sell luxury high-end vehicles that the commissions have to be pretty good because by now, like I need money immediately. So I remember like it's Route 40, which is in Baltimore, and there's all these luxury car dealerships. So I started at the Mercedes end and I literally just drove back and forth across Route 40 to the Lexus dealership. Nobody would hire me, no one. And I would call back and I mean, point blank, just be like, why? And they say, no, you're great, but you don't know anything about cars. And I was like, yes, I do. You know, I grew up loving cars. It wasn't enough, you know? So finally, I went to where I bought my van and I went across the street because I knew the same company owned the luxury dealership, the Jaguar Range Rover dealership across the street. And literally I like did my hair and makeup, tried to look all rich and walked in there. And I said, look, I drove my van here. I bought it across the street at your Honda dealership. I need a job, And of course they were like, oh, whatever. And I was like, no, I really need a job. Like, I'll go get coffee. I'll do whatever. I'll work for free. And if you hate me in 3 weeks, you can get rid of me, but I bet you I can sell cars. And so I left, and I could not believe he called me back. And I got offered the job finally. And I was number one salesperson in just over a little 2.5 months, selling Jaguars, Range Rovers, and all that good stuff. And again, educating myself, like people would call for a used car. I'm like, I don't know anything, but I do love cars, but I'm like, I don't know about every single car brand, especially with kids, you get busy. So I haven't kept up on stuff. And I just, they would call me and I would start Googling immediately, and I'd start pulling up everything that I could about that vehicle. And I had a guy, I forgot what model BMW it was, but he said, I bought from you because you actually knew about the car. And I'm like, you don't know that from the time you called, I was Googling, and then I had studied by the time he got there because I knew he was an aficionado. So I better know about it. And I kind of could tell him the differences between, the different like submodels. And then as far as Range Rover, again, there's more information that they give you. A lot of people don't read. I read every single page of those manuals. So I know why they don't tip over. I know where the engines are placed. I know exactly to this day why the brand has recovered. Tata is doing an amazing job because he owned, diesel vehicle, factories before. So, and then Ford with their awesome processes. I'm a car buff, really did some great things, and Jaguar hopefully at some point is on their way too. So I started doing that. I had gotten my real estate license before that, but I'll let you, I don't want to keep it.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So what sort of money do you think you're making at your peak with selling cars? Yeah.
That's the issue. I will tell you, even at my peak, a lot of people think that the car business, you make a ton of money. I would say it really wasn't a flagship store. And even at my peak, you're probably at about $100,000 a year, 110, even in luxury vehicles. Gotcha. Because of the differentials. And that's even with having like great reviews and all that good stuff, and making friends with all the service people. You still don't make a ton of money, and even in luxury car sales. And then that's the other thing. You will work so many hours a day. I had a gala to go to, and it was hilarious because I literally texted them, I'm writing a deal and I am not leaving. So so they had my plate in the back when I got there. So yeah, you can't,
no flexibility. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Cause if you do, like, I remember somebody there lied and said I had a floor partner. I didn't have a floor partner. So I had been stalking one of my clients, and it came in the day that I was gone. And I was like, no, I worked too hard. And so yeah, it's very cutthroat, which honestly doesn't bother me that much because I have to feed my kids. And, I felt like to sell cars without the grind. People still appreciate good service, care, and candor.
Gotcha. So I'm guessing, you're working your ass off, you're starting to make some money, but you're looking to be able to level up again. You want to get back to ultimately be able to spend more time with your kids. Is that the reason why you decided to get your real estate license?
Yeah. So the crazy thing is I actually got my real estate license years before, but never used it because we had bought that huge house, and we're actually going to level up, because you could do that at any time back then. You could just say, oh, I want something different, because the market was so great. So when I went to get my real estate license, by the time that was back, 2005, it was right before the crash. Mm-hmm. By the time I finished the course, the market had crashed. So I decided to keep that house and then sold it when I got divorced. So I had my license all that time, and as fate or God would have it, I was approached by Weichert, and they wanted me to, because I had business experience. They actually were just trying to recruit me as an agent. And then when she met with me, she was like, wait, you have all this business experience. Why don't you apprentice and open up a Weichert office, or, manage one of our offices or open another one? And so I was like, okay, that sounds great. What's the catch? But she said, look, you get a salary, you'll get medical benefits. And I was like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. So the problem was, it was still like a third of what I was even making at the car dealership. So it was like no money whatsoever. However, you can make commission. I didn't even listen to the rest of it. I'm like, commission, sure. Like, I normally read everything, but when it's commission, I just sign because I know whatever the model is, I will make sure that I work my butt off. and not stop till I succeed. But when I got in and so I started working for Weichert, and I left the car dealership. And probably within 3 to 4 months, I realized, I had made $9,000, but I had made the company like 80 because they only give you $200 off of each transaction. And no one sells that much real estate. But again, I mean, you hear it, it's a recurring theme, like just follow the process. They give you all these manuals. So I would stay up at night, if I was breastfeeding my daughter or I'd be up with one of the kids, I'd stay up at night and read these manuals till I was almost red-eyed. And so they tell you how to sell. So they had you hosting open houses, which I did. I followed the process. They taught you how to sell homes. And if you add that plus love for serving people, you'll start to do well. So I figured it out. We went back and forth, and then I finally decided to sell real estate and would have stayed. Splits were pretty low. They're very corporate.
So we're around 2010-ish? What time frame?
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. We are at 2015, probably 2014. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because it hasn't been that long. I had the license, but I just never used it because I was only getting it to sell my house. Because the first house I sold myself. This one, I realized it was so expensive that I would pay a real estate lawyer all that money. And I had done that because I knew the margins would be tight. It was the only reason I was getting my own license. Because I'm like, if I get the license, I'm not greedy, but the margins were so tight that I realized I have to put that money back in the coffer for the commission. So then I used it, fast forward, around like 2014, 15-ish. I think it was 2015-ish was when all of this happened, and I went with Weichert and everything.
So you moved on from there. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so I moved on from there. My first transaction was with a Keller Williams agent. He kept in touch. They had great training, good mindset stuff. And so finally, when I left Weichert, I went over to Keller Williams and was super excited, mainly because I wanted to build a team. At first, I just was like, let me just be the Lone Ranger. I've already run a business. I've got kids. I'm tired. I just want to just be the little single agent. And very quickly, I realized, okay, your business is growing. What are you going to do with it? And so here we go again. I did real estate because I wanted the flexibility to be with my kids. I could go on all the field trips. I worked a lot, but I could be with them. And in cars, you can't do that at all. So I got my time back, but then I realized my time was also obliterated because I was doing everything. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. And because I've run a business before, like, that's crazy. I'm like, there has to be, but I didn't know there was like a way, like teams were small then. It wasn't a big thing. And when I was in insurance, I was called like a mega agent there. But again, we didn't have a roadmap. So I always knew, like, you got to start finding a roadmap. Like maybe nobody locally, but somebody somewhere has figured this ish out, So found a company that had the roadmap. So switched over there, got a transaction coordinator. By now, so this is the crazy thing. I still really wasn't on social media. And I had a client, probably like 20 years older. She's like, you got to get on Facebook. You got to get on Instagram. And I'm like, no, I don't, And again, I grew up in Holiness Church. I kind of missed the whole technology thing and just never caught up ever. So I was like, why? I'm busy with my kids. Why do I need social media? Now it's hilarious because I'm on there like 7 to 10 times a day. People probably get sick of me, but they call me when they need a house. So I finally got on. I just closed the deal for Katrina yesterday. And it's funny because I owe her so much because I finally got on social media. Didn't know what I was doing. Hired somebody in the Keller Williams office to set up a profile. She asked me to post a personal picture just of anything. I was like, I don't even take photographs. Like, what am I going to post? And then why do people need to see me or my children? I mean, honestly, even my mother's groups were sick of me because I was the only one left on the listserv. I refused to get on Facebook because, again, I'm busy. Who needs to know all of the stuff? I'm just busy working. So I thought it was a plaything. And that shows, your lack of understanding. Wow. Think of how much more money I could have made. But I've always had one mantra, and that's what I grew up with, is just work harder. Like, you don't need more information. You need to apply what you have. So again, to me, why get into Facebook and Instagram? It's just a distraction. Finally got on, posted picture of me at the beach and the kids or whatever. And people commented on it. They really weren't commenting too much on my annoying house stuff. So the social media lady, she just kept saying, you need to be like a real person. So finally, like I started posting and people started following, and I ran into people like none of the stuff I thought would happen would. Like everybody was nice and kind. And I ran into people from high school. My older relatives were on that I didn't even know had cell phones. They were on there. And I got really good really fast. And within 1 year, I increased my production from 5 million to 15 million in a year. And I would say the approximate cause, I'm very involved in moms groups and stuff, but I think when we would go and I would meet with people and then they'd see the interactions that I was having on social media, they would see that I'm obsessed and I love what I do. I'm a salesperson, but I love helping people. I love real estate. And so they would call me. So then I was getting overwhelmed just answering because I still had just the transaction coordinator. So then I hired a VA in the Philippines, which I knew nothing about. And she had worked for an agent. So she was like amazing. And then she was now I was getting busier and busier and busier. So she hired her next door neighbor and I created all these little templates and they were helping me. And then she started helping me with the kid stuff. So like when the forms would come in, she would like help register them for pizza, sports activities. Girlfriend was ordering stuff on Amazon for me. Like they were like, one was like my work wife, you know? So the other one was helping with the business. Then we brought on one more person. So people would think that I was answering and I was on social media all the time. And I was like, no, I have this little team. So then kind of as Tony Robbins says, but like when you start off, you hire like your friends and then you hire your family, then your friends, and then you hire people to do the job. But then you hire like visionaries, you know, who can get to the next level. So then I started realizing, Kenita, like you need some real help. So then, you know, I started outsourcing and bringing companies because I could eventually afford to do that. So that was kind of the trajectory of how I grew, you know, within Keller Williams. And now, of course, I'm with EXP. And then I got a lot of people asking me for coaching. So, you know, I had received coaching and then finally decided to open up my coaching business.
Wow. So it appears to me like you have mastered the hardest things to learn, such as, you know, just work ethic and just being really good with people and just naturally amazing at sales. The thing that seems to have been, you know, that I'm not hearing that could have just amplified everything times 10 is if someone who had all this experience and was at the higher level, sat you down at an early age and gave you that roadmap in real estate and just showed you how to do different things, you could have grown so much faster. But you were trying to figure a lot of this stuff out yourself. Is that right?
Yes, I was. Now, I will say that finally I got a coach.
Yeah.
Because that was like unheard of. And again, it was someone told me, it was one of the coaches later on in life was like, wow, you're pretty amazing. Because I don't even know how you've been growing backwards this long. Like growing in reverse.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that, again, because I had such a hard work ethic from my parents, it was like, no, just work harder. And why should you go ask somebody for information if you're not applying 180% of what you know? But the neat thing is, yes, I did go through MAPS coaching, which I love. And that helped me because I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. I mean, I knew what I was doing as far as helping people, but I knew how to run a business, but as far as like running a real estate business, somebody asked me where a form was the other day. And I know like that we need the form, but I'm like, I haven't gotten in there to actually key stuff in the longest time. I just know who to find, who to trust, and then also how to oversee to make sure it's done correctly. So, and then I went through Club Wealth coaching as well. And then at one point I had like 2 coaches from 2 different organizations because they were great and very expensive doing that, but they each offered me something. So then with personal branding, I have coaches. And so once I got that concept, I probably have I had too many coaches at one point because I had 2 different personal branding coaches at one point, 2 different real estate coaches at another point, you know, I had a personal trainer. So now like that I finally kind of got, I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So when I was younger, I would exhaust the library on anything about like money. I started off with like Larry Burkett, which is like a famous Christian author all about money. And then went on to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all that stuff. And I'd forgotten about it till recently. I'm like, where do I get the stuff in my head? And I realized like, whoa, when I was younger, I used to read all that. So now after having kids, like you get away when you have a young family from like reading, I'll just be honest. So I have Audible. and I read a ton, and I feel like just the personal growth, I just never thought I could do it. And if I could tell anybody, like, I thought I could do it, but then when I had kids and everything changed, and I thought, I now am responsible for these lives. And this is different than the reality that I had kind of envisioned for myself, which is why I had worked so hard to get there. So I tell people, even if you have these goals, sometimes things just come through and like obliterate what you thought you wanted or had. And you think, can I really start over? You know, and sometimes you start to think like, wow, maybe what I had before was this miracle. And I'm here to say, no, like the same you that built that empire, whatever it was, can rebuild another one, you know? And where your mindset is today, if you're down, it's going to come back. So now the neat thing is, you know, like the personal development piece of it that I've had now, I never had that, never, you know, like, I mean, I'll just be honest, like I was defined 100% in roles of being a good daughter, you know, a good minister, a good mom. And those things are great, but that's all, a good wife. And that's all I defined myself as while I was working out of duty to take care of my family or to take care of whatever I was given at that time. And now I'm realizing, you know, as you develop yourself, you have so much more in you, not just for that small orcas, but for the whole world. And so now like my vision is really huge because I realize as you tap into like what you've been put here to do, like you could just help so many people.
So I'm curious, you know, no, you've obviously going through such hardship but building up a big business initially, going through hardship, then building up another big business, it must give you a lot of confidence knowing, you know what, it doesn't matter what happens to me, I'm going to be fine, right? But it's only because you've had to deal with that. But what would you say to the young Kenita, if you could look back now and give her some advice, the one straight after the divorce, she's, you know, and you're on bed rest. If you could give that person advice right now, what would you say to her?
It's going to be okay. No. Well, I would say that first, that it's going to be okay. I would also say,
and sorry, and this is just to everyone in general, right? Who's down and out, but it just happens to be you.
So I would say, I know this sounds cliche, but to work on yourself first. And I don't mean like just to beat up yourself, you know, because I am probably my biggest critic and, you know, struggle with that, you know, just like kind of being that overachiever, like you got to put more and you got to work harder, you know, but I would say work on yourself first. And what I mean by that is like the growth, it's wild. As a salesperson, I feel like I'm pretty nurturing as a mom. And as a salesperson, I'm like all about results and making sure that we get things done and clients are served at a high level. But I thought like turning inward and doing some of the personal reflection and self-growth would actually like bring down my, my get it done attitude. I didn't want to have any excuse for not being my best. But what I would say to everyone is like, as you work on things, you can keep like getting to a higher level, but what happens then? And what happens after that next level? And what happens after that next level? So if you never achieve like full happiness and fulfillment in yourself, and what a lot of people don't realize is as you do that, so yes, we're getting books on money, but are you getting books on self-love and self-compassion? Brene Brown's like the big thing right now on self-compassion, but it's so important because a lot of people that I coach, they struggle with, what are people going to think if I get up on stage? Or even I was nervous for this webinar. I mean, it's normal. But what happens is a lot of people will shrink back and not push. I jumped out of an airplane and people go, oh my God, yes, it's crazy. I don't suggest that everybody do it, but I did it and I'm going to do it again in about 3 weeks. And, and right before you jump, you're like, no way, this is crazy. I'm not getting out of this airplane. And then you're done, and once you start free falling, it's the most amazing, peaceful thing that I have ever experienced in my whole life. I talk to God all the way down, first from fear and then from reflection. But what I would say about, about things is as you turn in, you start developing more confidence, loving yourself, dealing with trauma, dealing with things that you've been through, you start getting more confident and you start not caring so about what people think. And as I've built my personal brand, and I would say my biggest like kind of growth that happened was getting on social media. Like, hey, I have a message to share of encouragement and love, and also helping others. And that comes through, I feel like, in my sales as well online. I just love people. So when I kind of got over myself and got out there and started, even with my coaching brand, I'm like, people would think, Kenita, you have so much to say. But in your own mind, what people don't realize is you struggle with the same thing. Does anybody really want to pay to hear what I have to say? So what I say to everyone is write that book, do it, make the course, record, go live, get out there, sell. Don't worry about what anybody thinks about you. Love on you. You're amazing. You're enough. Like, you've been sent here with a purpose, and who cares what anybody thinks, And surprisingly, those people, the last thing I'll say is, Seth McGalley, he said something really neat, like, who is suffering because you are not giving them the gift of what's inside of you. So instead of thinking like, oh my gosh, who am I going to annoy? You have to think there's somebody suffering because you have the answer to their problem. So open your mouth and help and solve it. So that's probably what I would have told myself, like, sooner rather than later, is like, get over yourself, get out there and just do it.
So one final question. What's next for Kenita Tang? I mean, it sounds like the sky's the limit. You're doing so many things right now. I mean, what's the end goal for you?
So end goal always, I have a lot of stuff that I say my brain doesn't sleep. So I always work on that, like, to try to just go have a woosah moment, because I'm so excited at so many opportunities that we have online. We're living in the most amazing time ever, I think. Yes, there's a lot of mess going on, but there's a lot of amazing things going on, because you don't have to pay. When I started my insurance business, you had to pay or get somebody to give you a crap ton of money to open a business. Now you can go online. It's not easy, but through hard work and very little money and a cell phone, you can change your whole life, just like I did with sales. So I think for my next step, definitely online courses. I want to try to encapsulate all the knowledge that I've accumulated and help somebody else not have to go through all of it firsthand. And also, I'm working on a little something with the kids too. So we want to do like a YouTube channel. And so I'm starting, building a little studio in my basement, which not a lot of people know. So that's like on a whole nother thing, with them, so that, we can really, I can continue to focus my sales and business, around them, and continue to sell to the next generation through the power of YouTube. So those are some little things I'm working on now.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I do something similar. I've got a 9-year-old, and so I'm learning, I run his social media accounts. So I'm learning TikTok, and got him on Instagram.
Talk about this, not to run your account.
Yeah.
After, my kids are probably already following your kid.
Totally, yeah. He's starting to get into his groove. So that's fun. All right, well, look, I really appreciate you giving us this time. An amazing story. You're an amazing person. I'm just a little bit speechless, because I'm like, oh my God, you've done so much. But I just love how you're, I guess you're growing up. It just had such an effect on you, and just made you so determined. It really made you who you are today. But the fact you never gave up on yourself, you're always positive. I'm sure the kids are a big push, right? Obviously, you can't give up when you got kids. And wow, just what you've been able to do is amazing. So I think the online course is awesome. Hopefully it'll inspire a lot of other people, and there's probably a ton of potential there. So love it. Thank you so much. And let me get this thing edited up and out to everybody.
Great. Awesome. And thank you for what you do. This is such an encouraging podcast. I'm telling you, Kiwi, it's such an encouraging podcast to show people that they can do it. So thank you for launching it.
Oh, no, you're too kind. I appreciate you. All right. Thanks, Kenita. Have an awesome day.